The ominous threat, the ominous rhetoric surrounding potential nuclear conflict has reached new heights. Sergei Markov, a pro-Kremlin spokesperson, has warned, and it's going to be on the front pages of the tabloids tomorrow morning, I'm sure, of nuclear war by Christmas in the UK in response to Western nations permitting Ukraine to deploy long-range missiles. And of course they're not long-range anyway. This escalation follows the United States' provision of ATACMS missiles alongside the UK's Storm Shadow and France's Scalp missile systems. Markov's argument hinges on the notion that these precision-guided weapons require Western operational assistance, making NATO nations de facto participants in the conflict. And while such claims amplify fears, they're consistent with Russia's repeated nuclear threats, which have accompanied nearly every Western military aid package to Ukraine, from tanks to fighter jets. President Biden's decision, supported by senior UK and European defence officials, aims to enhance Ukraine's ability to deter Russian aggression, and advocates argue that this move strengthens Ukraine's position without crossing into direct NATO engagement. Nevertheless, the Kremlin's response has amplified tensions, with figures like Donald Trump Jr. accusing the Biden administration of deliberately escalating global risks and not waiting until his father gets into the White House and is inaugurated on January the 20th or something like that. Russia's history of nuclear brinkmanship raises questions about whether these threats are tactical, whether they are bluster to deter Western support or a genuine prelude to catastrophic escalation. And Markov's assertion that the West's involvement marks a big jump towards nuclear war is a way to exploit public fear, particularly as Western countries are tiring of the prolonged conflict. The situation underscores three critical points. First, the escalation risks, as precision weapons like ATACMS and Storm Shadow could strike deep into Russian territory, potentially hitting symbolic or strategic targets. And Russia's doctrine of nuclear deterrence includes responses to perceived existential threats to its nation, making any miscalculation perilous. The second point is the idea of unity, as NATO nations face the challenge of maintaining unity under increased pressure because Markov's rhetoric attempts to sow division and hesitation among the NATO Western allies. And the third point is public anxiety, with figures like Markov predicting nuclear catastrophe and even Scandinavian nations warning about or issuing survival wartime guides. Fear may undermine Western resolve unless leaders maintain transparent communication about the necessity and proportionality of their actions. The timing of Markov's Christmas warning is deliberate, playing on this symbolic symbol of the season of peace and goodwill to stoke dread of impending chaos. But it's worth noting that this rhetoric coincides with Russia's ongoing struggles in Ukraine, which have also been ramped up by Putin's use of this enormous missile and the threat to use it to strike into Kyiv itself. And the Kremlin has resorted to hyperbolic threats as well as hyperbolic missiles to compensate for military setbacks. And those military setbacks, along with the setbacks to the ruble, are significant. The ruble, I think today, against the dollar, has just reached 100 rubles. It's a sort of symbolic moment of anxiety. The threat of nuclear war by Christmas is less about an imminent apocalypse and more about psychological warfare, and Western policymakers must balance deterrence and escalation control, ensuring aid to Ukraine without triggering the exact catastrophe that the Kremlin forewarns, foreshadows, threatens. The path forward requires steely resolve, clear communication, and vigilance against the spectre of World War III being used as a potential cudgel